Hello and welcome to the OKPreps Extra Sports Show. I'm Patrick Prince, joined as always by Barry Lewis. Barry, a lot to get into. It's a very newsy week. Let's start in Broken Arrow, where you were at the press conference this week where they brought Travis Hill in as the head coach to replace Josh Blankenship. Your thoughts on that hire?
I think it's a great hire for Broken Arrow. It's a great fit for so many reasons. Travis Hill, great coach. He's shown that in how he has been able to turn around programs at Muskogee most recently, and then before that, East Central. And also, he is a Broken Arrow resident. He's been a Broken Arrow resident for 25, 26 years. So, and he's worked at Broken Arrow before. He was the defensive coordinator on their 2018 state championship team. He's got two kids who are graduates of Broken Arrow. So it's a great move for him. He doesn't have that long commute to Muskogee anymore. But what a job he did at Muskogee. He's got a lot of passion, outstanding coach. I think Broken Arrow's hit a home run with this pick. So yeah, and what an introduction he had as head coach. They went all out to introduce him with the band, cheerleaders, video presentation. It was quite the introduction and ceremony. So Travis Hill is the head coach at Broken Arrow, and I think look for Broken Arrow to be back to being a state contender again.
What's the biggest issue facing him as he takes over Broken Arrow? Like what do they need to do to get on I mean, they need to do a lot of things, obviously, but maybe the most crucial thing to kind of get on that level they're trying to get to, the Bixbys, the Owassos, the Jinxes.
I mean, there's several things he's going to need to do. I think he's already got a pretty, the Broken Arrow job right now is in better shape talent-wise at this point than it would have been a year ago if he had taken the job then, if it had been open. So I think Josh Blankenship had the program going in the right direction, and now it's up to Travis Hill to build on that and move it forward. Also, a big task for him is to get the Broken Arrow fans back involved. There's a lot of empty seats this past year or two, as it looked like some fans had lost interest in the program. That's a big stadium. And I think if you get the fan base re-energized and recharged, that could make a difference. It could really give you more of a home field advantage. So that will be very important. And I just think that Travis Hill's experience, his record of success, I think that is just so important to have in a coach. And I think he will be able to make a difference there. He's looking to be a difference maker on and off the field, and I think he will.
All right, let's talk about Owasso now. So Antonio Graham, after 1 year at Owasso, pretty successful first year, goes to Union. I'll tell you what, we'll get into Bill Blankenship in a second. Let's stick with Antonio Graham. Your thoughts on that move? Not real surprising move. Your thoughts?
No, it wasn't really surprising when kirk-fridrich announced he was stepping down as head coach at Union. Again, 18 years ago, this happened the same way. It's amazing how it's happened out so similarly, where kirk-fridrich left Owasso after one very successful year as head coach and goes over to Union. And of course, he was the head coach there for 18 years. So Union and Antonio Graham, if Antonio Graham can accomplish in the next 18 years at Union what kirk-fridrich did, what a blockbuster move it will be. So Antonio Graham's wife works in the district. He lives close to Union High School. His alma mater is Union. He's got so many ties to Union. It just made it seem a slam dunk that he was going. I could sort of feel the vibe that he was leaving. He left a really classy post after that heartbreaking loss in the championship game the other night. And so it seemed that my first reaction at the time was, oh, is he saying goodbye? Because it sort of felt like a goodbye at that point, although it was not a done deal at that time. But there's just so many reasons why that seemed to be a good fit for both parties. And So Antonio Graham, it'll be interesting to see, obviously, if anybody from any of the players from Owasso and any of the assistant coaches from Owasso follow him over. In these days of high school athletics, where we've got the so-called transfer portal or one free move, one free transfer, that's very much a part of the high school scene these days. So how many people are going to follow Antonio Graham over to Union from a really excellent Owasso team? Because if you look at the Owasso team over the entire season, that Owasso team was the best in 6A1. They weren't the best last Friday night, but they were the best overall for the season. So there's a lot of talent there that both on the coaching staff and on the playing field that potentially could follow Antonio to Union.
Okay, in a surprising move, Owasso announces that Bill-Blankenship, coaching legend, is returning to coach the Rams. Help us make sense of that one.
Good luck on making sense of that one as we tape this. This is before the press conference that was going to be held yesterday, but was moved to Friday. So don't know exactly why he ended his retirement after 1 year. It did remind me of the former Union and TPS athletic director, Gil Cloud, who always joked he failed at retirement 2 or 3 times. And now I think he's finally got it right. But maybe Bill was failing at retirement. He's got a lot of energy and a lot of passion and a lot left as far as coaching's concerned. And I mean, it's not unusual. I mean, even like the great Vince Lombardi, he retired as the Packers coach after winning the first 2 Super Bowls. He got tired of retirement after a year and came back to coach Washington, then Redskins in the NFL. So Bill Blankenship is not the first coach to announce retirement and then after 1 year out, return. Now look for Kirk-Fridrich to do that someday. Speaking of the former Union coach, but he's already telegraphed that. He says he expects to be coaching someday. He's just going to take a year or so off and watch his son play college football and be a dad.
You mentioned Coach Frederick. Let's talk about him for a second. What's his legacy at Union? He won, 5 state titles, 18 years. His legacy is what?
Greatness. I mean, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame this past summer, and the more you get away, the more the time elapses, you'll look back at his legacy. 5 state championships, 5 state finals in 18 years. They're a contender pretty much every year. You'll say, wow, that was an amazing run he had. In the moment, it's always sort of natural to think, oh, because they didn't quite go as far in the playoffs over the last 6-7 years or so that many had expected. And it probably didn't meet his expectations either. They had 2 incredibly heartbreaking losses in the semifinals in 22 and 23 and some really good Union teams. So there's the first inclination to say, oh, they, sort of a disappointing end, and maybe that colors your thinking a little bit about his legacy. But when you step away from it, you're going to say, wow, what a great run he had. That's his legacy. One of the great coaching runs in Oklahoma high school football history.
Well, speaking of legacies, let's stay with that theme for a little bit. Keith Riggs announced his retirement at Jinx, and they always say never follow a legend, which is what he did at Jinx and Allen Trimble. But in 7 seasons, he won a couple of state titles, and not just winning. He seemed to hold up. I don't know if you call it the class of the program or the integrity of the program the way Trimble did. He seemed to carry on that legacy, just not as long as Trimble. Is that fair?
That's fair. I had to think, if you look back at it, I don't think you could have picked a better person, made a better choice than they did when they named him as Coach Trimble's successor. I mean, what a great 7-year run it was. He said 2 state titles, 3 runner-up finishes. So he's in the championship game 5 of the 7 years there, and he's in the semifinals those other 2 years. So close to making it to the championship game this year, and just led the program in a classy manner on and off the field. And you look at his whole coaching time at Jenks. He was a coach in the football program for 22 seasons, and they won a lot of state championships during that time. So, as you said, it's really tough to follow a legend. It's really hard to maintain what a great coach has built, but he did it. He did an amazing job. I think it's one of the most underrated coaching jobs that a coach has done. It doesn't seem like he gets enough credit, but congratulations to Coach Riggs on a great football coaching career.
Jinx promoted their defensive coordinator, Adam Gaylor, to be their head coach. You like that move?
I like it a lot. I like, some people were surprised that the move came so quick. I mean, they made the head coaching decision so quickly. It was very reminiscent. I mean, this is really weird the way it played out. The first Thursday in December last year, Owasso did the same thing when Bill-Blankenship retired, and then he introduced his defensive coordinator, Antonio Graham, as the head coach. Boom. And then this year, first Thursday in December, you have the same thing happening at Jenks. And I think what Clay Martin said, athletic director Clay Martin said about it, it's like when he was asked, why didn't you have a lengthy coaching search and explore all your options? And he just said, if you've been around Coach Gaylor enough, that you realize that we don't need to search. I mean, he's the right guy. I think Owasso felt that same way last year with Antonio Graham, and looked how it turned out. I mean, what a season it was. And I think Jenks feels that same way with Adam Gaylor. I mean, you just know he is the right guy, so why search? And Jenks has had a lot of success on their last two head coaching openings, promoting from within, because that's what they did with Keith Riggs, although they had like a 3-week search or so at that point. And then with Alan Trimble back in 1996, although technically he had left the coaching staff for a couple of months to enter private business. And then they got him back and changed history of Oklahoma high school football with it. So Jenks has had good success going that route. So I think it's a great hire. Players really like him. And I think Jenks may have sensed some coaching openings around. So maybe this was also, besides feeling he's the right guy anyway, like wait around and have someone else come in and swoop him away if there's all these other head coaching openings.
Yeah, good point. All right, now let's talk about Bixby. But before we do, I have to say, Barry, I've been thinking on this show, we've talked rightfully so a lot this year about Owasso and what they've done, and how Jenks kind of has rebounded from a slow start, and the Caleb Barnett saga and some of the things going on there. And I've been thinking on our show, we haven't talked a ton about Bixby. I just kind of had that in the back of my mind. And then they win the state title anyway in dramatic fashion. Why don't you just kind of take it from there and tell us about the dramatic game you witnessed? One of the best you've ever seen. You wrote about.
Yeah, it is. When I think about, we were talking about Kirk-Fridrich, and one time he asked me before a practice, I think it was the 2017 state championship game, what the best large school state championship game, or I think he just said best state championship game I've ever seen. And I said it is definitely the Dreamweaver game back in 2010 when Union beat Jenks 50-47. I didn't think any game would ever top it. Well, I think this last Friday's Bixby-Owasso game has topped it barely. Both of them were incredible games. An amazing game that went into overtime. And if Loren Montgomery, his place among the legends of Oklahoma high school football, was already secure before this game. No matter what happened in that game, he's going to be on the legendary coaches list of Oklahoma high school football. But he added to that legend last Friday with that decision in overtime to go for two. And of course, it paid off. They won it. It was a decision that he had made earlier that morning, and with his coaching staff, as they talked around and discussed the ending of the Sulphur Lincoln Christian game in the 3A final the night before. Sulphur late in the game. It wasn't overtime, but it was late in the game. They were down by 1, and they were just pretty well dominating the line of scrimmage at that point and worn Lincoln down. And they just decided to go for 2, and it failed. Lincoln came up with an incredible stop just inches from the goal line, but Coach Montgomery and his coaches agreed. They thought that was the right call, as do I, and that if they were put in that situation again in the championship game, that there would be no hesitation. They're going for 2. I mean, it's the easy thing. Just like there's a lot of people in the press box in Lincoln Sulphur game thinking, oh, why not kick? You got to kick the extra point. No, you don't. I think your chances are a lot better if you got that type of momentum to go for 2, go for the win there, because there's so many things. First of all, there's no guarantees you're going to make the extra point. And second of all, I think the odds favor you going for 2 at that point instead of just extending the game into another extra period, especially when you're in that situation that Bixby was in. They would have got the ball first in the second overtime. And I think that is definitely a disadvantage. I mean, it's a big advantage to know what you need to do when you're in that overtime period. And because, you know, who knows if the coin flip goes the other way. Maybe it's Owasso winning the state championship. Maybe it's Antonio Graham going for 2. I bet Antonio Graham would have gone for 2, because this game came down to a pair of late game gambles that both went Bixby's way. But I think there was like a little over 2 minutes left in regulation. Owasso's leading by 7. They're totally dominating the line of scrimmage. They've got over 300 rushing yards. So they got 4th and 1 on their own 28. Bixby has 1 timeout left. A first down. If you convert 4th and 1 there, you seal the game. You win the goal ball. And of course, so Owasso went for it. You could have punted, but Noah Hill, as good a player and kicker as he is, he a little bit erratic on punting earlier in the game, kicking in that direction. He'd had a 12-yard punt, and that would have just been disastrous if that would have happened again. And so I think the odds definitely were in Owasso's favor to convert that over punting it away. And even if you got a good punt, you know, Bixby Magic, they expect to win in that situation. And I think just the best approach is to make sure Bixby doesn't get the ball again. It didn't work out. Bixby came up with the incredible stop, and the rest is history. Bixby wins the championship. But I think, I like a coach going with that approach. He's playing to win, just as Coach Montgomery was in overtime. And I think it was the right call. It just didn't come up with the right result for Coach Graham.
Well, and on that 2-point conversion, a lot of credit to Cooper Parker. As you wrote about, that play was designed to go up the middle, and it wasn't there. And he kind of kicked it outside and easily scored. I mean, talk about that play a little bit.
Yeah, great instincts.
Yeah.
Because that a lesser player, I mean, you call it the same play for a lesser player with not as good of instincts as Cooper Parker, that play gets jammed up. Because that was my first thought. It's like thinking this play's going nowhere, and all of a sudden he bounces it outside, and boom, he's in the end zone and is firing the ball up in the air in celebration and getting mobbed by his teammates. If there's a regret I have during this football season, I wish I would have I had considered it strongly at times, but I should have included Cooper Parker in the all-world top 10. So he was like on the verge, on the edge so many times of me including him in the top 10. One thing that sometimes works against the Bixby players, and I try not to get too stat heavy on the all-world rankings, but because they have so many blowouts that they don't accumulate the stats that some other players do, because the players aren't playing the entire game. But I've liked Cooper Parker for a long time. He just brings a lot of intangibles. He's an impact player on both sides of the ball as the backup quarterback and leading tackler on defense. And he should have been in the all-world top 10. So, but anyway, you're saying we didn't talk much about Bixby all season long. Well, that is true, because I think for several reasons we sort of take them for granted. You expect Bixby to be good, and this year got off to a rough start for them. This may have been one of Coach Montgomery's best coaching jobs, because they only returned 4 or 5 starters.
Yep.
The 22 positions. So the Owasso game, there was a lot of growing pains there, and Owasso stunned everybody, and Owasso made a statement. And then Bixby got back to pretty much being Bixby for the most part for the next 8 weeks, although instead of scoring their normal 70 points a game, they're only scoring in the 50s except the night I saw them, they scored 85. I've set the all-time record. But yeah, the offense wasn't quite as good as last year. And then in week 10, there was sort of the shocker that when Norman pretty well dominated them, came away with a convincing victory at Bixby. So you're thinking, uh-oh, Bixby, they're definitely not the favorite anymore. They're not the team to beat if you have Norman going in there. But just like 2022, when Jenks did it to Bixby, although not in quite as dominating fashion, although it was sort of close, that Bixby got back on track. They have such a culture of winning, confidence, knowing what to do, and they got it together for the playoffs. So I think Bixby might have, they were even ranked 4th in my final rankings. So I think they sort of snuck up on some people a little bit this year. So that's why we didn't quite talk about them as much as we might have in other years.
So if Bixby and Owasso played each other 10 times, how would things shake out? I mean, I guess ultimately what I'm asking is Bixby the better team, or were they just better that night?
I would say they were just a sliver better that night. Over the whole year, I think you would probably give the edge to Owasso. But if they played 10 times, I'd say they'd each win 5 times. I'd look at it as Bixby, Owasso, and Jenks were really evenly matched. And I think you saw that play out in the playoffs because Owasso needed 3 overtimes to beat Jenks. It's just so incredibly matched, evenly matched. That's what made the playoffs so exciting. It was sort of what I envisioned in the preseason, except instead of Owasso being in that trio, I envisioned Union being in the trio. And I thought those 3 would be pretty even. And then there'd be a little bit of there was a talent disparity between those 3 and Owasso. Well, I was proven wrong. It was Owasso was in the trio and not Union.
All right, let's talk about the games coming up. What's the game this week you're looking most forward to?
Rejoice Christian and Hooker. It's Hooker is this has been it's the number 1 and 2 matchup, so that's always special. And it's sort of been the teams have seemed to have been on a collision course all year long, especially after Hooker beat Fairview in the regular season, and then Rejoice beat Fairview in the playoffs. And so the neat thing about this is the winner is going to come away with its first ever gold ball. How cool is that? So that's always exciting when you get a school win a state championship that's never won it before. For Rejoice, is their first time being in a state championship game after they've been in the playoffs every year. They've been in the OSSA all 13 years, but this is the first time everything has worked out. Of course, good health has been a big factor, as I'll write about in Friday's Tulsa World, in Rejoice's big-time playoff run. But this is sort of like, from a physical standpoint, a David and Goliath matchup where you've got Hooker, who is big and strong and physical, and then you've got Rejoice, who is skilled but undersized a bit, and they're fast. So it'll be interesting to see which team emerges with the gold ball on Friday at UCO, 1 p.m.
All right, let's leave it there for this week. Great stuff as always, Barry. We appreciate you joining us. Barry and I will be back next week, and we'll talk more football.